Well, listen, on our podcast today, we're just so excited to have my friend Kevin Pulley on with us and here on the Valley Hoops Insider podcast. And Kevin is an old friend of mine. We used to do some work together. I want to talk about that because we'll just laugh and have fun. But I
Yes,
also
sir.
want to talk about what you're doing. Tell us, Kevin, way back when I knew you like in the mid-late 90s, you were a hip hop kind of radio DJ,
Yeah, yeah.
sports stuff with me, with a lot of other people. Now you're in the education world, done some coaching. Give us a little bit of bio.
Okay. Well, first of all, Harry, thanks for having me on, and I'm wishing you the very best in health and as you go through, your period of quarantine. Wishing you the best health and blessings with that. Number one. But yeah, I guess I go back to. Um, I was blessed to be a radio personality here in St. Louis for about 10 solid years. I was a DJ by the name of Kevy Kev.
Kevin Kev,
Uh,
baby.
right. Old station was Magic 108 FM, became Magic 105, Magic 104.9. Then I did hip hop 100.3 The Beat. Was all hip hop station, and so I had an awesome 10-year run there. The funny thing about it is during that time, like I always say I got to meet these mega stars say when they were kids, the Jay-Z's and Beyonce's and Ushers, these people who are super famous now, but when I was hanging out with them, interviewing them, they were 15, 16 years old. So, it's kind of funny now to see those kind of things. The Queen Latifahs, the Ice Cubes. So I did that for 10 years to about 2000, and then during that time, as you know, being in the broadcasting business during the day, you have a lot of time. So I went back to school and got a teaching certificate, became a teacher. And so when I got out of the radio full time like that in 2000, I started teaching school. I was a history teacher, and in the St. Louis Public Schools. I'm at Carnahan High School now. I've been there. Be in the fall, be 15 years there. But I actually teach media there. I get to teach, hopefully, young people to become Harry Schraders. That's the
We're going to
goal.
shoot a lot higher, bro. Got to see you a lot higher.
No, that's the goal. I'm hoping to produce some future Harry Schraders. Boys and girls. I teach freshmen, sophomores, juniors, and I have a senior internship class where we work down at the district TV station. So that's been fun. And during that time, I did do some coaching. Like you said, I never wanted to be. We were new high school starting up, so I ended up being a football coach for 4 years, a head football coach, which I don't. So this day, I don't know how that happened, but I coach football, varsity football. I coach girls basketball. I coach baseball. I still coach baseball. It's been 15 years of baseball.
Not one phone call to your old friend to come help out.
Listen, you can. Hey, when we get back to playing, please come on.
There you go.
Please come on.
So you and I did St. Louis U women's games together for 3-4 years. And
Yes, sir.
you and I are part of the broadcast team. The first time the Billikens ever went to postseason basketball, we went and played in the NIT up in Iowa somewhere.
I remember that.
And you and I got to travel through Conference USA. We drove to Cincinnati and Louisville and Marquette, Chicago, and all those different places.
Yes, sir. We sure did.
And we were talking earlier today, and I said, I don't know if the broadcasts are any good, but our drives were a lot of fun.
Great conversations. Great conversations.
Talk about great friendship, and we'd like argue politics, and we'd argue.
Oh yeah.
We went all over the map.
Yeah, we did.
Back in those days, basketball games in the West Pine gym. It was just
West Pine.
good times to be in announcing basketball.
Oh, it really was, and it was different. And let's be honest, during that time, Harry, we saw some great basketball. The women's college basketball at that time, St. Louis University was in Conference USA. But as you know, the women, they weren't getting their just due. I mean, they just were not. We didn't broadcast most we did the home games, but at that time they didn't finance for us doing the road games and things like that. We got to do a select few, but the women just weren't getting their just due. I'm so happy they are now, because they deserve it, and they always did deserve it. Going back to Jill Pizzotti. And
I keep in touch with Jill a little bit on social media. We'll send a message once in a while. She was a great coach and a good
She
friend.
was great friend, fabulous. she's awesome, and I have not done the best job of keeping in touch with her, but I follow her. In fact, I think one of the last games I saw before the break with the virus was them getting ready for the NCAA tournament. They were playing in the I guess they're, what are they in the Big East now, or the and of course she's at DePaul with Doug Bruno, who of course she coached against during that time. She's in her hometown now.
Yeah, she went over to the evil empire, but we won't talk about that. I'll never forget Kevin Pulley. One of the funniest things that ever happened to me in broadcasting is we were doing a game, and the Billikens were largely African American in makeup, and there were two young girls that were white girls that kind of interchanged at one position for the Billikens. And I remember saying to you on a broadcast one night, I was having trouble differentiating those two girls. I said, those two white sisters look the same. And you lost it just like that in the broadcast. And I thought, what did I say?
Was that Kirsty? What was her last name? I can't. She can shoot the three. I can't. Her first name was Kirsty. I don't know. I cannot think of it. But she was. I think she's from Indiana. Yeah. She kind of fit the prototypical from who's basketball in her blood.
Sure.
Love the game. Could shoot that thing too.
So we had some good times, and we talked about a lot of stuff. When the George Floyd thing happened and protests began and riots began and reactions from all over the country, I immediately in my own brain I thought of people that I know and really care about that are of African American descent. Do they feel put upon? Do they feel kind of put at right now? Do they feel under the gun right now? And so you're one of the people I reached out to. I reached out to a handful of friends of mine, and to just say, man, like, how are you? How are you doing? And so kind of question one for me, Kevin, tonight is, so we've all seen the George Floyd videos. We've all seen the pictures. We all know the story. I want to know your first thoughts, first impressions, first heartache, anger, whatever it might be, as an African-American man watching that thing unfold. Obviously we didn't watch it live, but it's like we're watching it live every time we see it.
Yeah. You know, I think I was like most people with a heart and a conscience. You just, even now, it's hurtful to see that somebody could do that to another human being. And it was like just no regard to the fact that he knew that he was being video recorded, and just I was just at a loss, like, you know, no respect for just life. And then, you know, when, you know, that's something, when you hear of a grown man crying out for mama, it's over. You have given, and you being a pastor, a Christian brother, you could appreciate what I'm about to say in terms of your faith in Jesus Christ. When you call for mama, that's like our Lord Jesus Christ saying, "It is finished." That's it. It's over. When you are I mean, you are crying for your last piece of air, and so to see that, man, it's hurtful. Seeing an African American man that happened to, and we've seen this, you know, we've seen this displayed out so many times, Harry. But to actually see it the way we did now, where it's like we didn't watch it live, it's like we're watching this live. I mean, we saw it with Eric Garner. I was talking to my daughter about it the other day. I said, you know, we had seen Eric Garner in New York die like that. But I think the fact was you had people saying, hey, he can't breathe. You know,
there are people that are standing there talking to him. Yeah, right.
Yeah, they're actually having a conversation. With Eric Garner, they were just choking him to death. Nobody was having a conversation with the police, but they're talking to this man as he's killing him. So I say to myself, what was he hoping to gain? He had to be thinking, I'm going to do this till he dies. I can't see anything else.
The video is so shocking. The story is so surreal that it's even still right now hard to believe.
Yeah.
Like the picture that's indelibly in my mind is him there kneeling on George Floyd's neck, hands in his pocket, no expression. Yeah. I mean, it's not even like he's mad at the guy. You know, like
Yeah,
Like think about an act of passion, an act of rage, and the guy is totally dispassionate. That to me is almost what's the most shocking.
it it's just and again, I'm 57 years old, okay,
I told you I
and
was mad at you. You look a lot younger than me when we first
I,
got on this video.
and I'm older, see,
Okay.
older than you, see.
No, I'm
So,
older.
at 57, but but here's what I'm gonna say. I'm 57, Harry, and my mother and father had to have that talk, which we talk about, the talk about what to do when you stop by the police, and believe it or not, that's that conversation where you learn. It's kind of like in sports where they say live to play another play. You
Mhm.
know, your job is to get home. All you want to do is hope that you could maybe see and remember a police badge number and get home to your parents to try to start a legal procedure, because that's it. And I told the gentleman that this was back during the Michael Brown situation. I said, you white gentleman, I said, you don't have to have that conversation with your son. And I should say daughters as well. Me
Right.
being a man with three daughters, and there's a professor, Dr. Crenshaw, who's at UCLA in Columbia. Dr. Kimberly Crenshaw has the campaign Say Her Name, because there are so many stories of African American women who've
Mm.
died the same death, just like George Floyd. So, you know what? And I'll be honest, and I'll be quiet, get it back to you, Harry. But if you are an African American parent in today's time, and you don't sit down and have a conversation with your son or daughter, and I'm talking young, I'm talking 5, 6, 7 years old, if you don't talk to them about the police and what can happen, you've done them a disservice. You've almost put them on a course to be hurt by
Mm.
the police department. And I know that's a lot of people, that's hard to believe, but that's a reality.
It is hard to believe, but we know it's true. And I want to say out front to people that are watching this that you're not a every police officer is a bad guy. You have friends that are in the
Nah,
police department,
nah.
and yet this is a reality for African American people.
Oh, absolutely. Hey, listen, I go to church with John Hayden, the chief of police of the city of St. Louis. I'm on the deacon board with him. Very good friend with him. I've interviewed him, talked to him. Hope maybe at some point you'll get him on the show. I'm sure he'd love to come on with you. And so I know, we all know that there are great police officers out there. Listen, if something bad happens, if it's who are we gonna call?
Right.
The police are necessary. We just know that there's another side to it too, being black in America. But I mean, what are we gonna do? What are we gonna do? We can't live without them.
You live in North County,
Yes, sir.
Kevin,
Grew up in North City, live in North
and
County.
so
Yes, sir.
since the eruption of things, and things have died down a little bit here in St. Louis, and other places are a little bit more volatile right now, in terms of the what the protests turn into sometimes. But in your neighborhood or with your family, how are things different today versus 3 4 weeks ago when George Floyd was killed?
Um, I would say that there is an alertness, and what I mean by that, why I think I would say my family, of course, just like the rest of America, shocked by what happened with George Floyd, but also I really believe that something has happened in America, now, you know, with a large majority of people. I mean, and that's the thing. You see these protests, and we've all said we could see. We all were like, "This is horrible. This is cynical. We've seen this. We'll see the protests. It'll die down, and we'll go back to business as usual." But I think it's different. It's different because you're seeing people in St. Peter's, in St. Charles, in counties in Illinois, white people, and black people connecting, brown people of all different backgrounds, uh, Latino, all together. This is a different movement. You look at what's happened in Washington D.C. Constantly out in front of the White House, painting the Black Lives Matter in front of the White House. It's different.
There's no doubt that it is different. that more people are engaged in this than ever before. And I don't think there is going back. I was telling somebody yesterday, I don't think there's putting the genie back in the bottle this time.
Yeah, yeah.
And thankfully, right? I mean, as nasty as some things have felt and as angst ridden as so many things are, we have to have these conversations and we have to go forward significantly and definitively as a nation.
Oh, absolutely. And you know something? I'll tell you something. I'm somebody I had a huge Black Lives Matter banner in my classroom, huge. And I actually, somebody asked me about taking it down, and I actually had it taken down. And you know the reason why I took it down? Because I didn't believe it. I didn't believe that Black Lives Matter, not in the school, in the city, in the community. And to me, it was hypocrisy. So while I believed it, I was like, I don't need this, because it made me angry, because I see things that happen to our kids, our students, and they, like, to me, looking at it as an old guy, that their lives don't matter. So it's like, if I put that up there, and the person that was arguing with me about it was a white young lady that I work with. She's like, well, why you want to take it down? And I said, because I just don't believe it. Now today, I put it back up today, because I believe something has happened in the heart of the country. I really do. I put it up gladly. Wish I had it now, but but at that time, and again, we're only talking about maybe 6 months ago. I just, you know, I was at that point. It's kind of frustrated by a lot of things.
One of the things I think that is hard for most people when we try to have these conversations is that there's there are absolutes, right? Do Black Lives Matter? 100%, right?
Yeah.
Um, is there nuance in how that's played out, or is there nuance in, well, of course, police blue lives matter too, of course, right? Like nobody's saying Black Lives Matter, aren't saying that blue lives matter. They're just saying,
Right.
hey, we would like Black lives to matter.
Yeah, yeah. See, and that's where it all gets jumbled up right there, because you take it's always been that way. If I have an appreciation for my heritage, or being, African American, what have you, Black history, that doesn't mean I don't have an appreciation for anybody else's history. And because I say Black Lives Matter, that doesn't mean I'm saying blue lives or everybody's life doesn't matter. But right now, the issue is Black lives, because based on what we see, they don't matter. Because you don't have to have that conversation with your kids. You don't have to. I'm pretty sure with you, the police is a friend you can always count on. That's not the way it is in my community. And that's not to say that, again, if you really want to fix something, you can't take it that way and say, well, he's saying all police are bad. I'm not. Listen, I want the police to come when I'm in trouble and I'm having an issue. I want them to come, but I want somebody that's gonna come and not shoot me in my house because they think that I moved my hands too quick, or they thought I was the victim. And 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 what Black people are saying, it shouldn't be like rocket science, because the best example to me, Harry, is go back to Central Park and the lady with her dog there.
Right.
And you had a gentleman who videoed her when he asked her about the dog should be on a leash, which was the law. She actually believed in her heart that, listen, I know America. All I have to do is say you did this, and with it being me who want the color of my skin, you're going to be assumed guilty. That makes a statement.
Mm.
The fact that she could feel confident that she could outright tell a lie and it would be believed by people. So I think a lot of messages kind of get jumbled up there. I think they get jumbled up with Colin Kaepernick. I saw Colin Kaepernick is no different than Muhammad Ali when he refused to be inducted into the army to go to Vietnam, or Kurt Flood, using sports examples now, right? When he said that he was, he was going to sue baseball. But it was bigger with Colin, because Colin now is talking about the whole, he was talking about something that's taking place all over the country. The fact that he could not get a job. He couldn't get it. We love sports. He couldn't get a job. Still can't get a job. What does that say? And you have guys who have allegedly abused their wives. They've assaulted people. They've used illegal substances, and they can get right back in the league. you take a stand and say, hey, I have an issue with something that's going on, and you're banned from playing the sport that you love, from your profession.
I think that good-hearted people can disagree about Colin Kaepernick. What I don't think they can disagree about is, if you'll remember, his first thing he was sitting down during the anthem, and people told him that was disrespectful. And as a matter of fact, a veteran soldier got a hold of him and said, "Hey, that's disrespectful. If you're going to do that, take a knee, show respect." And Colin Kaepernick took that advice and did that. I don't think there's any disagreement that he is trying to attempt to shoot down the flag. I think, like I said, I think people can disagree that, well, maybe he shouldn't do it then, maybe he should do it then. But I don't think the issue is respect. I don't think that's what he was attempting to do.
No, I think he was using a platform that he had to draw attention to a huge problem in our country. And you start looking at the words of the Star Spangled Banner, and you just really start going through it, and you say, well, what freedom does everybody have? Freedom? Is there a system, things in place where people are being denied opportunities? And you hear things, even the president say, well, if you don't like it, go somewhere else. But why should I have to go somewhere else? This is my home, just like yours. Just like you and I had a conversation. We're talking about Drew Brees, and he makes a statement. And I've always been a Drew Brees fan, thought the world of him, and along with his benevolent work as well, especially what he does in New Orleans. But when he talks about anybody that would take a knee, I'd have a problem, because they're disrespecting the flag of my country that my grandparents fought for. And the first thing I say is, well, wait a minute, my grandparents fought too for this country. They went to war too. They were killed too. And guess what? When they came back home from the war, they couldn't even get a hamburger. They couldn't even sit in a movie theater. They couldn't even, get drinking certain water fountains. They couldn't even vote for a war that was making the world free for a democracy. So you tell me who's really the patriotic one when you want to talk about that. Who really, and the fact that, yeah, your grandparents were in the war, mine too, but guess what? They're in the segregated army because you don't believe they have what it takes to fight side by side in a war. So, I get started on that, and
Hey, you were a history teacher. You're a history guy. We had a march here in our neighborhood 2-3 Saturdays ago, and one of the things that people said at the end is it was sponsored by the school district or people in the district. I don't know exactly who sponsored it, but people that were up speaking at the end were like, we have to make sure we teach more or enough or whatever history related to African Americans in our nation. Are there segments of history? Are there certain aspects of that history that you think are woefully missing in what is most of the history education in our schools?
I think so. I think we miss it tremendously. Unfortunately, if you probably check in with a number of students, probably middle through high school, you ask them about prominent African Americans that played a role, they're going to tell you Dr. King. Dr. King was great. He achieved and accomplished a great deal. We wouldn't be having this conversation we're having now without his work. Right. But there are many others along the way that had a great story that we don't hear much about. We don't hear much about the Tuskegee Airmen. You don't hear about the Marcus Garveys. You don't hear enough about the Little Rock Nine. You don't hear enough about John Lewis, and you do to some degree now, but you just don't hear about. You don't hear about Buffalo Soldiers. You don't hear about the 333rd in the Civil War, the Black Fighters. The movie Glory was based on. I think I said 333rd. That's actually the airmen. But right. But you just don't hear enough of that. We just we don't hear those stories enough of people. That were heroes as well. When Pearl Harbor happened, and you have an African American sailor who was a cook go to a gun that had never had a gun and begin shooting down Japanese planes on the Arizona on the ship there. So um, you know, there's a lot that we're missing, and this is American history. You have to ask the question: well, why do we have to have Black history? Well, we have it because we're talking about American history, but so many African American stories. And again, if we start talking about women, Native Americans, you can go down the line, stories not being told, and there is more to the African American historical uh, story, the diaspora, than of course Dr. King and the Civil Rights Movement, which was tremendous. You know, you probably don't have many schools even talking about Malcolm X or the Black Panthers. So you know, that's.
I was leading a prayer meeting down at the old courthouse last week, and um, so I just wanted to rethink through the old courthouse and the Dred Scott thing, and in doing some of that research, I also found out that there was a court case decided there. A woman named Virginia Minor tried to vote and got arrested here in St. Louis in the 1870s. She took it to court and lost, just like Dred Scott did, at the old courthouse downtown St. Louis. So that courthouse is there as a testament to saying no to the rights of people, you know.
Oh man, it sure is, and it's something really historic. And again, some cases there with housing here, landmark cases here, with the tenant housing rules and things that they had in place here. So yeah, a lot of history there. That's why you might, and I'm sure you saw the exhibit at the History Museum a couple of years ago. It was called Number One in, I believe it was Number One in Civil Rights. Remember that exhibit that was at the History Museum?
I didn't see it.
Didn't get to see it. It was there almost a year, about, I want to say maybe 2-3 years ago. And I asked the question, I said, well, when you take this exhibit down, where is it going? Because I'm thinking if no other city would have because it was all about St. Louis's civil rights, history. So I couldn't see it being interesting to people that lived in Cleveland or Pittsburgh or Los Angeles or New York. My question was, why isn't it staying here in some place? And then, some museum, what have you, it needed to stay in St. Louis, but I don't know what happened with that.
As we think through all that's been going on, I want to kind of go point counterpoint, kind of like, what about this versus that kind of questions, just for fun.
Just for fun.
Yeah. So, but before I do that, I've got a couple of them over here on this piece of paper. On this piece of paper, I think this is the question I've been asking some of my African American friends. What do you wish white people knew, understood, felt? Because I think I told you the other day I preached a sermon about race and whatnot in our church, and I started my sermon with this phrase. I said, "I am not woke," and so what do guys like old white guys like me need to learn and understand? Like if there were 2 or 3 things you said, man, Harry, if you would catch this, it would make a big difference.
That's a great question. And I think about that. I think, excuse me. I think one of the things that I would hope that we all kind of take a look at is that we have a system in place, and I'm talking about our capitalistic system, our theology as ideology, I should say, as it relates to, as that relates to how we govern with our democracy. If we think about the way it works is, even in capitalism, you have to have somebody on the bottom in order for it to work. It inspires people because I think in the back of your mind, at least you say, well, at least I'm not as bad as that guy. And it has to work that way. Well, we put a system in place like that with slavery because farming and agriculture was the driving part of the country before we even began to, it led to us being able to industrialize. So you had to have the backbone. When you talk about people building a country, it was built on agriculture, tobacco, cotton, these products, that the country needed. You needed cotton to make clothing, textiles. Tobacco was used. And then if you go even further in the Caribbean, you had Dominican, you had Jamaica, you had sugar. So all these products was helping to industrialize the world, and they needed slaves. So where am I going with this? Okay, here's where I'm going. Where I'm going is saying that all the slavery institution helped drive us to become industrialized, so that we had machinery, we get railroads, we get uh, uh, leading up to automobiles, to computers today. But it had to have a foundation to produce wealth, and that workforce, that labor force, was slavery. And so where I'm going with this is, I would like people, when you hear people talk about um, uh, supremacy, white supremacy, and people say, well, what is that? What does that really mean? It means that you put together a mindset. To me, this is just Kevin Pulley saying, you put together a system, a mindset for production, for people to have success, but it was built on something else, the labor force, that led into other careers and everything else. And the mindset for me is that things might be bad, but at least I'm not on the bottom with those guys. You look at something like Archie Bunker, the old All in the Family series, right? Now, would you say Archie Bunker was a rich guy?
No.
No, he wasn't, right?
No.
But the one thing that drove that guy, and he was supposed to like represent middle class America, what have you, the thing that kept Archie going is, no matter how bad stuff might be, at least I'm not black, right? That was his thing. I'm not African American. And then, of course, you had the Jeffersons come along later on, and that kind of threw a curve. But I would say, if there's something I would just want people to think about, nobody just becomes just, you wake up, oh, okay, people be, wealthy, you have success, but there's something that has to happen for that to be in place. And slavery is a part of our history, and that workforce and oppression, all of that has been part of it. And there's all kind of, everything we enjoy today, there's benefits that came about because of having a lower class in the country. That's, if that makes sense. Does that make sense?
Sure. So,
okay.
You and I were talking earlier today, and there's no doubt that the laws that we now have are better than the laws were in the 1800s, the 1900s, the late 1900s. And yet the big kind of conversation today is about police reform, and people smarter than you and I know, are going to figure all that out. But that's obviously needed. When you look around, are there other legal things that you think need to take place to even out, level the playing field, protect African Americans?
I think so. I think, like anything, we in our communities where you'll see a majority of us living, just like we want the best. If it's groceries, food from the grocery store, we want the best police officers too. I have a sense, especially when it comes to color, white police officers. I don't think everybody's not bad. Everybody's not, but how come we don't get some of those good quote unquote white police officers in black neighborhoods? Why don't we get them? Why are they in other areas? And those areas might be determined by someone's wealth, what have you. Why don't they get, why don't we have those? You spent time in Ferguson and working there. One of the things with Darren Wilson, when you read about him, is he talked about how he saw Mike Brown as like almost like a big He-Man, like a giant. His mindset. Why is somebody patrolling a group of people like that, and they're really afraid of the people that they're policing, that they almost see them as less than human? They have good officers. Why aren't those officers placed in communities where we are as well? Why do we get the ones that, because they're not sending those to the better areas of a community in terms of economics. They're not going to put the quote unquote renegade type officers in those areas. They're not going there. And everybody, they know there's bad guys on on a force. They know who they are.
No doubt this whole database thing that they've talked about, however it comes to play, will be huge. Derek Chauvin had all kinds of infractions before the George Floyd thing. I think 14 different things against him, that he had done too much force and so forth, and yet they don't keep up with it. And so those police reforms that they're talking about in some way, shape, or form, we trust will happen soon. I know there was for some people, a very disappointing decision yesterday. The Senate didn't want to take up a bill by Tim Floyd, but at some point, it seems like we're on the precipice of getting some things changed in that regard, and we certainly hope that happens.
Yes, sir.
So hearts versus laws, though, right? You're a man of God, a deacon in your church. The hearts of people have to change. So we want the laws to be better, but good laws and bad hearts don't always equal the same thing. And so when I think about this circumstance that we're in right now, like I said earlier, I want to engage in conversation with people, and I want to try to engage others in that conversation so that people with angst and anger and bitterness on any side of this question can hear reasonable people. You said something about Michael Brown seeming different, less than human, or something. Well, I forget the phrase you used. I think we have depersonalized and dehumanized the people that we disagree with. And we're willing to kill them, with our words in social media, and apparently we're willing to kill them physically because we have dehumanized them. And I think that is this crying shame of what's going on right now.
Oh, absolutely. And again, if you don't see a person that you're policing or anything, if you're teaching that person, if you don't see them as human like you, then how are you ever gonna be fair with them? Because you don't see them like you do. You have pets, and you have a degree of. I mean, imagine if you seen someone do that to a dog, just put a knee and kill a dog. Imagine that, but you do that to a human. Yeah.
So I want to ask some of the dumb white guy questions, okay?
I hope I know the black smart guy questions of it. I don't know. We'll see. I don't claim to be a smart black guy, but let's see.
Well, listen. see, here's what I believe. I believe there's a wound in the heart of a group of people in my country called African American people. I think there's a wound. There's been so much offense and wound. I think, hurting people end up hurting themselves or other people, right? And so for generations, we have the majority race has hurt the African Americans. That being said, when something happens, the George Floyd thing happens, protests happen, and then the riots and we burn down the Quick Trip happens, that pushes some people farther from a productive conversation, because they say, well, what are they doing? I mean, they're just burning down buildings. Talk to me about maybe some of the feeling, the rage, or whatever it is that's stirring people to that, and speak to, man, you agree with that or you don't agree with that. Talk to me about that.
Well, I think first of all, let me say I think Dr. King had a solution with nonviolence as far as being able to get something accomplished. We saw it with civil rights bills and voting rights acts occurring and taking place, and those things wouldn't have happened with violent protests. But by the same token, today I'm not saying I don't agree with the violence, the burnings, these things, but you understand how it gets to this level. I think to just say, for someone to sit back and watch their TV and say, how can they do that? Those are the people that they're not like you, trying to understand, well, what would make a person want to do that? Because see, you have to get to the point where you can, I think if you're going to analyze it like that, you also have to be able to say, what can be in a person's heart that would make them feel like they could actually be on somebody's neck like that? How do you get to that point? If I was to ask Chauvin a question, my answer would be, what were you hoping to accomplish? Were you hoping that he would die, or when were you gonna stop? What was the goal with that? So when you see people burning. And again, also remember too, there are people that do have some agendas and want to take advantage of what's happening too, because those are opportunities for people to loot and steal and do some other things like that too. So that comes into play too. So I think I apologize for that. Uh, so you do have to ask that question. What happens with that? But I'm not for that. But I understand how we get to that level. To me, it's understandable. Do I think that's the answer? No, I don't. I don't. But you see how we get to that. We get to this level like this.
Uh, the hot topic button of this week, there'll be a different one next week, but the hot topic button this week is statues, and I think that for way too long we've had this blindness in our minds about some of the statues and monuments across the nation, um, and conveniently or just blindly we said, oh yeah, those Confederate statues, who cares, it was part of our history. And just speak to that a little bit.
That's a history that I think African Americans we don't want to. We know it was there, but we don't like memories, things around it. I think that constantly remind us of that. I don't think you can, you can't eliminate your history. I think they could go in a museum somewhere or something like that. I don't, when I see a Confederate flag, I don't look at it as, well, that's just history. I look at it as something that's hurtful. Again, I liken it to the swastika for Jewish heritage people. It's hurtful. It's painful. Um, and even the fact that when I see at football games, and and at Georgia, those universities with those Confederate flags outside the stadiums, and I'm thinking that now they have African American players on those teams. And again, I'm a sports guy like you, and I think to myself, wow, they just don't know. Because in as much as I love sports and college football, there's a side of me that says, man, I wouldn't let my son play at one of those SEC schools just because of the history and because of those flags, and now they've since removed that, but that's a hurtful thing. And they were the last conference to allow African American players to come in and play there, and that's a history. And now that's like the league in college football, but there's a history there. And I think too many times people don't think about it. But the answer about the statues, the Confederacy, why do we honor people who fought against the country? Who fought to take the country over? Why do we have those honoring? What were we thinking when we did those statues?
Do you think it's better? Better is the wrong word. Would there be a better way to do it, meaning petitioning governments to take them down versus defacing them and pulling them down? Because I can see both activities. Honestly, I can. I'm not that kind of guy, but I get the, listen, we're trying to change everything, and we have to take things stronger.
I think it would be great to petition governments to take them down and put them in museums. I think so. And you see, just like the Aunt Jemima ads and Uncle Ben's. I think they should, those images as a young Black kid, that I always thought of Aunt Jemima, that it was no question that she was a slave, and it came out of that. And Uncle Ben, was it gave the image of someone that was on the plantation, that and these types of images, there's those definitely aren't things that make you feel great.
It's funny. So, I read something about Aunt Jemima. Apparently, she was like a millionaire, and had an unbelievable career of sorts, and did all kind of amazing things. What role do you think the marches, if we call them peaceful protests, what role do you think they play?
You mean as far as bringing about change?
Yeah, bringing about change, awareness, whatever it might be. I mean, I think they're important, but I just wonder what you think about that.
Oh, I think they're extremely important. They're extremely important. They bring attention. They make people take notice. They make people pay attention. Pay attention. They make people research and try to investigate and find out what it's about. Absolutely. Demonstration and which leads to litigation, and then after that, hopefully, you get laws changed. So absolutely.
How I frame the question or how you frame the question starts to frame the answer, right? And so
Right.
that's why I think these conversations for us to say, man, let's look at details, let's look at facts, but let's look at heart. Like I was asking you about the looters. Yeah, there are opportunistic people out there for real. There are Antifa people in the middle of it. There are white supremacists out there in the middle of it, trying to
Right.
come up the works, no doubt.
Right.
Um, but there's this wound, there's this angst in the heart of an African American people, the African American people in our country, that we have to find a way to do some healing and bring about unity of heart and life. And even if you and I vote for different people, we can be running after the same thing. But
Right.
what's next, Kevin Pulley? Like hopefully we'll be back in school in the fall. I know the
Yeah.
coronavirus on top of the racial unrest has made everything crazy.
Yes,
You're
sir.
back in school theoretically in the fall. We're not going to go back to normal, but what do you think is next? What if you can, put on you remember Kreskin from the old days?
Yeah. The amazing Prescott. Right.
You could put on your futuristic thinking. Uh, what's next? How do we take the next steps?
Well, I think we have to continue to have conversations about it. I think we can't let it just go away and just stop. I think we have to continue to have conversations, dialogue about it. We got to be willing to, I think, step outside of ourselves and say, okay, we have a problem. See, I think before you can fix any problem, you have to acknowledge that there is a problem, and people have overwhelmingly acknowledged that there's a problem. Otherwise, you would not see all these people of different races and backgrounds coming together. But that has to continue. And like for me myself in the school, it needs to continue. Uh, I've often talked about the fact that we could do a lot better with what even the teaching of African American histories and studies. We need that. We don't have it. It should be there, but it should be there. All students. It shouldn't just be Black students taking the course. In fact, when I was at the University of Missouri, there were plenty of white students that were taking African American history, and they knew the history. And you know. I was always impressed by that. So I think we got to continue. I will say this though, since you brought up the political parties and things of that sort. I think as long as we have the present administration that we do right now in Washington D.C., I think what we're talking about is going to be diminished. I mean, because even right now, it's not an issue for them. It's an issue for everybody except the administration. I mean, when the president says, I don't think we haven't have a problem with systematic racism in the country, and that's why you see people want to take down monuments and everything else. He's it's not even being addressed. It's not even a topic of discussion. No thoughts on it.
So,
Oh, wow.
but I appreciate that because I just love catching up with you and
Yeah.
like I said when I got a hold of you, I told you that I just think we have to throw conversation out there for people to grab onto. And so,
Oh, yeah.
Kevin Pulley, I really, really, really like you, love you, and I appreciate our time together.
No, I love you, man, and you know what? I've always considered you a great friend, and I tell you, I've not like I said, it's been so many years now. I get a chance to reflect, think, man. And my daughter told me to tell you hello to my
Ah,
daughter,
bless her.
Elsie. She remembered
Yeah,
when we were doing games. She was really,
doing a
really
game.
small,
Yeah.
really small. But when I told her that I was gonna, she said, "You're gonna get to talk to Harry." So, but yeah, I had a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun doing those games with you. And thank you And I look forward to keeping in touch with you.
So here's what we have to make a commitment to. One of these days, you and I will either be in a march or at a prayer meeting together.
Okay. Okay. We're going to get you through this virus, and I will make, you got my word on that.
There you go. Good.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Kevin, bless you, my friend. Stay safe.
Bless you too. Thank you, Harry. Thank you very, very much. God bless. Yes, sir.